Brown said that they've foiled some major terror plot. What nonsense, what fear are they spreading around?
And what's this done to the Muslim community, not just here, across the northwest, across the whole of the country?
The question is, what is it doing to the white community? You are looking at all of us as terrorists. What sort of a world are you going to live in? Don't ever forget they came for the Jews first. And when they came for the Jews, the first Jews they came for were the ones they regarded as troublemakers. It'll never stop. This must be stopped.
Do the communities feel that they're in fear of more raids, of more...
The police have gone on record of saying we're not only not apologising, but there's more to come.
And how would you hope to combat that with meetings like this? What is this campaign all about?
This campaign's fundamental objective is to get the students out of jail, get their visas reinstated, give them a sense of human dignity, but most importantly, we're all saying we have had enough. Why should we communicate? Okay. Why should we deal with the police force that is raiding our homes? Why should we do any of this stuff? The war on terror must stop. This is all a fallout of a global war, not just a local war. We're paying the price for it. But for the residents of Manchester, just please keep your eyes open. Remember, Old Trafford was about to be bombed, but you probably didn't hear that the people who were arrested were given tickets for the match. And also remember, the Gaza convoy was recently stopped in a blaze of publicity. What you probably didn't hear was they were released unconditionally. And same are with these people. These people are innocent, there is no evidence. If the intelligence services make a mistake, why should students be penalized? And there are 20,000 Pakistani students in this country. There are 2 million of us living in this country. You cannot have a regime of terror and fear for all these people.
In getting started, and I'm sorry for people who were waiting outside for Granada TV to finish their filming, but thank you for your patience there. And thank you to the young man who was so good on the microphone earlier that he actually disrupted the TV repeatedly, but it was very, very clear what he was saying, so thank you for that in the background. My name's John. I live in Longsight. I've been asked to chair this meeting, and I'm going to abandon any microphone from the people who are up at the front of the meeting just because the feedback was so bad. But we are going to be using a much sophisticated technology system of microphone and mobile phone to talk to the families in Pakistan. We've got 5 representatives of the families of those who were arrested in Pakistan who are wanting to say very few minutes about what's going on there and how they feel about things. They're going to be saying that from 2:30 onwards. So if it works, we'll be hearing from them directly at 2:30, and we will be wanting to express our solidarity from the community here with the families there. And I hope that's something that we'll be able to indicate, even if only in the background, over the mobile phones from 2:30 onwards. There is a lot to say about why we have called this meeting and the meetings in the next week. There's another one on Tuesday evening in Cheetham Hill and a further one, I think it's the weekend, but in the university. We've got 3 meetings organised to try and give different parts of the community the chance to come together and say what we think should be done to combat the so-called terror raids that the police have been carrying out in this area. And there are many things that people will want to talk about today. I'm not going to say much, and I'm going to be guillotining Tariq very fiercely, who would say even more, because at 2:30 we have to stop for the phone, and therefore when I interrupt him, please understand that's why I'm doing it. But there are many things that people will want to say. All the different levels, from the high politics of Pakistan, the US and the UK, where the US wants Pakistan to assist it in its anti-terrorism and inverted commas activities, where Pakistan wants a deal to keep nuclear weapons that maybe it can compete with India on, where there are intergovernmental and diplomatic rounds where we've seen officials from the Pakistan government having a go at Gordon Brown and saying, well, what will happen to our daughters and sons who are studying in the UK? It's all a lot of high politics and many rumours, as you were updating me a few minutes ago, many rumours about whose intelligence service was gathering intelligence on who before who else is. And all that is very unclear. But there's another level, a very important level, of the Islamophobia, the discrimination, the violence, the ill treatment against Muslims in our communities, and something that affects all of those communities, black or white in those communities we're affected, because these are terror raids. And these are creating a climate which says that everybody, as I should say, I'm a lawyer and I'm representing one of the clients in the High Court on Monday and Tuesday. But one of them said, no secret to say this, the police asked him, why do you think you were arrested? And he said, because I have a beard and I'm from Pakistan. And if you look at the survey that came out this week of Muslims' views of Britain, actually, Muslims were regarded as more associated with Britain. That's how Muslim people in this country felt themselves to be more associated with Britain than the rest of the population did. And yet, in terms of employment and discrimination, often the most discriminated against. So there is a whole layer of things to talk about in terms of combating that Islamophobia and the discrimination and the terror raids against Muslims in particular. But there's another layer again, which is the law. And Sajida, who I'm delighted to say has joined us from Bernberg Pierce, she's also representing as a solicitor one of the appellants, whose father's going to be talking to us in about 10 minutes. But she and I are working in a field where the law, I've just heard you say to the TV, is actually worse in this country than in those countries such as Pakistan, where we're supposed to have been held up as having all kinds of kangaroo court systems or lawyers being sacked. It's actually worse in this country because the people who have been charged, the 10 who are appealing, who are going to be represented in court in secret courts on Monday and Tuesday, do not know what the evidence is that they are being charged with. Do not have the ability to instruct lawyers like us to go in and argue for them because we don't know what that evidence is. And that evidence is not going to be disclosed to them or to us. How do you, anybody who's had any experience of the law in this room, how do you go in and defend yourself against a charge when you don't know what the charge is? What are you supposed to say? And this is, kangaroo court is too kind. This is a secret court system. This is Kafka. This is something that has started from the attacks on people from Ireland, from people from the African Caribbean communities. The stop and search laws, just a small byproduct of this, and they're even having to scale those down, and now is into terrorism. The Terrorism Act 2000, the act which enables people to be detained in this way, and the special courts, the Special Immigration Commission, which we will be having to deal with on Monday and Tuesday. There's a whole discussion in that. But then, and this is what I hope this meeting will focus on mostly, there is the question of what we do about it. There's a question about what we in the community can say and what we can do to put pressure to stop this continuing. There is a question most of all as to how those 10 men who are in prison, top security prison, can be supported, can be released, can have their names cleared so that they can go back to being the students, the cricket playing students, the beard wearing students, all the other innocent pursuits. They came to have dinner every now and then at the Nawab restaurant down the road. It's not a crime to go for dinner in an Indian buffet restaurant, or to play cricket, or to have a beard, or to use a mobile telephone to your friends. None of these are criminal activities. There are no charges. Nothing has been proved against them, and yet they're serving that detention. This is an appalling situation for people to be in, and everybody with an ounce of humanity should be saying now, they should go free. If the government has anything on them, then let them stand up and say what it is. Otherwise, they should go free. And most importantly, we have to show from the communities that that's our view and that we want to make sure that we can force that on the government and the powers that be. Now, I'm going to stop at this point. I'm going to let Tariq say... Oh, no, I'm going to let Saj speak, am I?
Because then Mr. Ullah can...
This is so that he won't get interrupted. You realise this? It's just a trick. I'm delighted to welcome Sajida. Please do introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about what you can. Thanks very much.
My name is Sajida Malik. I'm one of the lawyers who work with a firm called Bernberg, Pierce & Partners in London, and in particular with a woman called Gareth Pierce. Sorry.
Use the microphone.
Should we get the microphone?
I don't
right,
understand that.
No,
go on, here you are. Have a go with the mic.
Okay. Hello. My name is Sajida Malik. I'm a lawyer from London. I work with Bernberg, Pierce & Partners, in particular with Gareth Pierce, who was involved. We spend pretty much every minute, hour of our working lives and non-working lives working around the issues of the so-called war on terror and the way in which it's affected, in particular, obviously, the Muslim community in this country and Muslims abroad. We represented men in Guantanamo, some of the first people ever to be SIAC'd in this country who were foreign nationals facing deportation for national security reasons, represent British nationals under control orders, and people subjected to financial regulation, rules and restrictions. And I just wanted to talk very briefly really about national security and what's been done in the name of national security in this country, and how the language of that has meant that we've lost fundamental rights in this country, and there hasn't been a squeak from anywhere. And I remember when I was a young activist, people smashed up the centre of London because they were upset about the poll tax. And here we are, we sit here where British nationals can be detained without charge under house arrest at their homes and no one cares. That we have people whose lives are being torn apart by financial regulations because the Secretary of State has decided that, I'm going to sit down. The Secretary of State have decided that they...
Sorry, do you mind just...
No, keep speaking.
Keep speaking.
Oh, okay.
It's a typical... Stopping you.
Okay, so I'll start again. I want to talk about national security for two reasons. Because it's the language that the government is using to subject innocent people in this country to the most horrific violations of their basic rights. And it's also the language the government is using to protect themselves, the perpetrators of these violations of their rights. Because they say, we do this in your name for the national security of this country. And to those men they say, you are dangerous, we can't prove it, you prove your innocence to us. So the whole system has been turned upside down on its head. What will be happening on Monday? We represent a young man called Abid Nasir, and they're in the SIAC system, and it's a special court system which has been set up to deal really with only two things. People who are facing deportation for national security reasons, and people who the government seeks to revoke their British citizenship. And there's only ever been one person they've tried to do that to, and that's Abu Hamza, and that's an ongoing battle. So the whole purpose of this court is to try and deport people for national security reasons. And it's called the Special Immigration Court, but actually it should be called the Secret Court, because those men will never know, and we've got people who've been fighting inside for years now, for 7, 8 years, will never know the allegations made against them. They will never be able to stand up and say, this is why you've got it wrong. And that's the fundamental cruelty of the regime. Some of the first men who were SIAC'd were foreign nationals who were picked up post 9/11 and spent many years in Belmarsh. They were known as the Belmarsh internees. And there were groups, including the European Group for Human Rights, who came to visit these men and said that it was cruelty, it was tantamount to the most horrific cruelty to keep men detained and not tell them what they were charged with. So they're in completely a limbo state, prolonged limbo state. And many of those men developed mental health problems. And many of them have gone completely insane, having lost their families and not being able to cope with that. And they said that it was tantamount to torture of those men. And that was challenged in the courts. And in an incredible judgment by the House of Lords, they decided that was unlawful, that you could not detain people without charge, without telling them why they were there. And the government, as always, was able to... So when the House of Lords said that's wrong, you have to release the men, first of all, they didn't release the men for months, then they did release the men and said, now we've got a whole other regime, we'll just create a new system. And then we had control orders, and they said with control orders we'll make it fair. Not only foreign nationals can be subject to control orders, but so can British nationals. And control orders is someone saying tomorrow to Tariq, we've decided that you're a risk to national security. We're not going to tell you why, but because of that, you're now under house arrest. You can't leave your home. You have to, or you can leave your home maybe for 1 hour or 2 hours a day. No one can come and visit you and your family unless they're cleared by the Home Office. So they have to make applications to do that. You can't have a mobile phone. You can't have the internet. You can't have any control over anything to do with your life. The police can come into your house anytime they want to search your house to make sure that nothing is out of place. And we've had men, mainly North African men, who were subject to that regime, who found it impossible to live with. And 2 of our clients actually decided to go back home. facing the risk of detention and torture, rather than to stay in this country, living with their families, because they were saying, it's cruel, we can't do this to our children. They can't have friends around, they can't live normal lives. We're sleeping at 2 in the morning, the police come and run through the house. My wife is there, my children is there, I can't cope. I'd rather take the risk. And that's the kind of horror of this idea of national security and the secrecy that goes with it. And that's something which now these young men are faced with. So they've been arrested, there's no evidence there, they haven't been charged. And believe you, if they had found something or anything, these men would have been charged with something. If it wasn't a conspiracy to cause explosions, it would have been something unsuitable on their computer, and there's nothing there. The police could have held them for 28 days, and they didn't. They released them after 14, which means they had no hope of finding anything, and they knew it. And despite that, the police have been briefing, we know local community people saying the investigation is still live, the investigation is still ongoing, we're having a look at the Southern Park outside of Manchester, but they would never have released those men if they thought there was any hope of finding anything. So these men walked out of that police station without a stain against their character, to find themselves now being held in the top security prisons in this country, in Manchester, Wakefield, with the most dangerous criminals, under the most severe regime. Our client, for example, has been unable...
Can we just get your number? We can't get through on the phone we've been dialing. Will you get the number from yours?
Yeah.
We'll phone him. Yeah. Sorry about this. If you phone him on that, we'll see what the speaker's like on yours.
We'll just take them.
Yeah. We failed on our phone.
Being held in, the most high security prisons in this country under Cat A provisions, which is the most kind of draconian part of the prison system. I mean, they haven't been allowed to phone home. So their parents have not heard them yet. They won't clear their phone numbers. They're delaying everything to make it very, very difficult for these men. And I should make it clear that, particularly our client, for example, he could go home. I mean, all of these men tomorrow could say, we're not going to bother with this, we're going home. And he's made his position very clear, which is, I am innocent. You know, I was here to study, I was going about my business, they've done this to me. And he says, maybe I could go home, and maybe for me, there are options, there are things that I could do. But it's wrong, and I have to fight it, because some of the other men, and many, many more that will follow, are the only hope for their family. The family will put everything together to send that person to this country so they can get an education and to help the rest of the family. So it's a very thought...
Speak up.
अच्छा आप शुरू कर दें.
Put it on the speaker.
All right, just to be clear what's happening here, Nasrullah Khan Khattak.
Hello?
Nasrullah Khan Khattak, who is the father of Abid.
अब आप बात कर सकते हैं. हेलो. आप कहें भाई, आप यहाँ पे मीटिंग से बात कर रहे हैं, आप शुरू कर दें. Hello?
Speak in English.
You can speak to the meeting now. You can start. Okay? Go on. जी.
My dear countrymen and all well-wishers who are here gathered for a noble and great cause. It is an occasion of pleasure to give me a chance to address you for the so remote area, and also occasion of sadness that I couldn't speak to my innocent son up till now. Being father of Abid Nasir, it was my earnest desire to express my inner feelings and convey the same to those who have pain in their heart for oppressed and affected community. I am very much thankful to your community, irrespective of religion, creed, and race, to give me a golden chance to express my feelings on this really auspicious occasion. Here, as you know, that our children who were implicated in the false case after thorough investigation they were absolved, and they were absolved due to non-availability of solid reason. Now, the cases, there is no appeal in the court, and we know hard about the Honorable Court, which is famous for their faith and rules of law and delivering justice to its oppressed community. Our children, being Islamicists, may not be considered as terrorists. Islam means peace, grace to all human beings equally. Islam, and it is its true followers are ordained for doing good deeds, not for evil deeds. Consider the murder of one innocent person, the murder of whole community.
Ask him a question. You want to ask him?
Khatak Sahib, can we ask you a question? Khatak Sahib, can we ask you a question, please? Would you like to ask? Who would like to ask? Who would like to ask a question? Yeah, go on.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, my name is Amy. I just wanted to ask you, how does it make you feel to know that your son is being treated in this way? Sorry, I'll just ask that again.
I think she's asking, how do you feel that your son is being treated in this way in England?
I'll just ask again.
Go on.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to ask you, how does it feel that your son is being treated in this way in England?
Treated, यानी उनसे ये जो किया जा रहा है, ये सलूक जो किया जा रहा है, इसके बारे में आपका क्या ख्याल है? Okay. Well, I think those of us who are gathered here would do everything to get justice for your son and for the sons of all the people who are actually being arrested with your son. Yeah, go on then. Go on.
Not this one. We've got to move on. Come. I want to say thank you another time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think to get the next line.
I'm not sure which phone we're going on to now. I'll ask Tariq to say a couple of sentences about what was said. What I can advise you... Oh, all right. You can hear it.
No, they could hear it.
All right. Well, I'll ask Saj to say a couple of sentences about what he said.
I think the most important...
Some people can hear it. I've walked round the room and the speakers seem to work in certain parts of the room.
Summarize.
So,
What did he say?
you know, yeah.
What did he say?
Give us 2 sentences.
He said that he thought how his sons were being treated. They were innocent, they'd been absolved of the crimes they've allegedly been claimed. Obviously, he's very, very concerned about them, that he'd sent them here to get an education, and that was the drift of everything. You're right, you can't make out every word, and I think
But he's not spoken to his son as well.
that's right, he's not been able to speak to anybody. And I think one of the things we can put across, somebody should do, but there's a lot of people here who want to, assist as much as we can, and whether we shout something or whatever in some sort of spirit.
If you just finish off what you were doing.
I'm just going to just explain what's going to happen next week. Just focus it back on the boys. On Monday, there'll be initially a closed hearing. And what that means is that the Secretary of State have lawyers and special advocates are allocated to each of the men. Most of the men don't engage with the special advocates, but they will go into a closed session where the Secretary of State will tell the judge in the case secret evidence that they have on these men. We will never ever know what that evidence is. Abid will never know what that evidence is. He will never ever have an opportunity to respond to it. So you start off with the judge being poisoned against these 10 men, and that's the only way you can describe it actually. After that, we have an open session where the Secretary of State have already served some of their open evidence, which is what they are happy to share with you in the public domain. And often that is nothing more than, we believe that you pose a risk to national security. Not why, nothing, and that's it. And if they get bail, if they're lucky enough to get bail next week, they will be most likely subject to extremely onerous bail conditions. So some of them are people who have been cited previously who are currently under bail conditions, have very strict curfews about the hours that they can leave the house. One of our clients wasn't allowed to leave the house at all. He had to remain in the house for 24 hours, not allowed to use the garden, which is incredibly cruel. Anyone who wants to go and visit them in the house, like I said before, will have to be cleared. No one can have a mobile phone in the house. There can be no internet contact, internet point in the house. And it goes on. And the police can come in and search whenever they want. Which means that to find bail accommodation, to find people who are willing to say, yes, we will take these boys, is an almost impossible task. Because anyone who's got children is never going to offer their accommodation, because it means your whole family life will be totally disrupted. And even people who live alone don't want that kind of interruption. And how many of us now can survive without a mobile phone and the internet? So that's our first battle, is finding people to step up and say, we'll take this on. And then we'll need to raise substantial bail sureties. And again, that's a huge battle.
अच्छा अब आप कहें जो कहना आपने मीटिंग से अच्छा
Who is it?
राजुल्ला खान जी अच्छा आप शुरू कर दें
Raza Ullah Khan, I wasn't expecting him next, but Raza Ullah Khan is the brother of Mohammed Ramzan, who is one of those who is detained. He's not detained in Manchester. Raza Ullah is speaking Urdu first, and then I'm going to translate afterwards, so bear with me if you don't understand Urdu. मतलब है कि आपको बता में ज्यादा करनी है हम लोग कुछ कर रहे हैं हमारा मतलब कि हम कुछ नहीं कर रहे सिर्फ मौका पे जो है हम ये कर रहे हैं वो कर रहे हैं अभी तक वो जो गिरफ्तार है कोई गुनाह नहीं है पता नहीं क्या क्या किया उनसे हमारे जो रिक्वेस्ट है उनसे कि वो जल्द से जल्द रिटायर हो जाए अपनी पढ़ाई पूरी कर लें तो खैरियत से वापस आ जाए क्योंकि हमारी वालदा साहब को बहुत अभी तक परेशान है वो कहती है हम लोगों पे यूँ बोलते हैं हम लोग को वो है और इस तरह है कि सिर्फ वो कोई करता है सिर्फ वो नहीं करते दीवार हो जिला करती कब हो रहेगा वो रहा था कब हो रहेगा मगर पता क्या मतलब पता नहीं वो तरीका चाहिए क्यों नहीं हो रहा है क्या क्या दिखा रहे हैं हमको परेशान है हम करते हैं सरकारें उनके लिए कुछ कर सकते हैं हम लोग की बताएं कि वो कैसे के बाद से और इनको रिकॉर्ड करते हैं और पाकिस्तान की हुकूमत से रिकॉर्ड करके झूठ ना बोला जाए वो कहते हैं हम लोग कुछ कर रहे हो चिंता से क्या है कहते हैं अगले वालों से बात किए अगले वालों कुछ नहीं कर रहे उनके पाकिस्तान के लिए सिर्फ डाल बड़ी मेहरबानी होगी आप लोगों की मीडिया वालों से हमारी रिक्वेस्ट है कि हमारे भाई को जल्द से जल्द रिहा कीजिए और बाकी लोगों को भी क्योंकि इधर पाकिस्तान में हमारे लिए बड़ी परेशानी बनी है और आगे जितनी आप लोगों से गुजारिश की जाती है मेहरबानी होती है कि आप लोग हमारे भाई के लिए कुछ करें क्योंकि ये मेरे वादा की बड़ी उम्मीद थी कि उनसे कर के आगे और मरने का हुक्म बन जा रहे हैं मगर पता नहीं क्या हुआ है अल्लाह ने मतलब क्या हमने गुनाह किया है हमारी इतनी बड़ी सजा मिलती है
मेहरबानी जनाब अच्छा खुदा हाफिज़ फिर हम आपसे इंशाल्लाह रब्ता करेंगे
I mean, the bedside in Klat, he was the brother who was phoning from Abtabad, and he was pleading that bail should be given immediately so that he can go back, if I understood rightly, to see his mother. His mother has not talked to him, and she's asking every day, when can she talk to him? No, I'm not upset. Anyway, he said about the British government that, release him, and he said of the Pakistani government, stop lying, you're not doing anything for us. And he was saying that we should thank everybody.
I was just going to say, could we not phone them back and just say to him, because we didn't actually have a chance to speak to him, just to say that, that we're going to do what we can here.
We'll be phoning everybody back, I mean, there are also, I think it's important to understand where these people are phoning from. There's 1 million people being made homeless due to the so-called war on terror. Some of these are people phoning us from these tribal areas of Waziristan where the bombings are taking place on a daily basis. And one thing that really touched me was that his mother was saying, I had sent my son to be educated. God, I'm not this soft normally. And I think that it's very important, really, that the amount of, I think the effect that it's having on the families overseas must be pretty. But I think one of the things we should really do is to understand that what we're doing here, it's very, very important. And some of the things that I was hoping to say later on, possibly I could start as we're waiting now. When we were giving leaflets out to mobilize people for this meeting, and I'm an old campaigner, and I've not seen a time when it's so difficult to actually get people to come along. The number of people I know who said that they are scared of coming to the meeting is quite really remarkable. And these are people I've grown up with who live around in these streets. So in one sense, I think it's incumbent and duty bound upon us all now that, because we go one stage further, that is that we're asking, these are people, I mean, in fact, one person said to me, there must be terrorists, are you trying to release terrorists onto the streets? Again, I think we've got somebody else on line. No? Should we respond? Should we?
As long as you promise not to interrupt me.
Well, I won't interrupt you. I'll be honest. But the family's my phone, and then
well, I'll keep it short. Okay, assalamu alaikum everybody. My name is Rizwan Sabir. I'm from Nottingham. If any of you haven't seen any of my speeches before, read the press, I, along with a friend of mine, Hisham Yeza, were arrested at Nottingham University on May the 14th of 2008. Our alleged crime was that I had downloaded an Al-Qaeda training manual from the United States Department of Justice website that was of use for my PhD, which I was in the process of drafting a proposal for. So that's basically me. When the Northwest 12 case happened, I was sitting there on my laptop doing some work, and I had the news on in the background, and I just saw the flash come up, breaking news, and there'd been arrests in the Northwest. And the minute I heard the Northwest, I was very interested because I stayed here for 4 years when I was at university at undergrad. And I'd heard that the arrests had taken place at Cheetham Hill, an area that some of my local friends from Manchester are from. So I immediately paid a very keen interest. But as soon as I realised the scope and the magnitude of what was happening, the first thing that came to my mind was, being a victim of this kind of state Islamophobia that we're encountering today, was that this is a complete fuck-up, and there's no other way of describing it. That Bob Quick had made that blunder in the morning with the paperwork, and now this had to be hurried and rushed, and there was no substantial evidence. That's what my initial kind of reaction to the whole thing was. And excuse my language, but I get pretty passionate about this, as you can expect. So it was quite unbelievable for me, or I should say believable, that this is going to be a complete mess. Anyway, I rang my lawyer straight away and said, look, are you representing any of them? Has anybody got in touch with you? And I tried to basically liaise to try and get these guys some representation, because I know that if you've never had any encounter with the police, and in this case the students haven't, then you don't really know very much about the law, especially the Terrorism Act, which is very diverse and very broad, and this can end you up in a lot of trouble if you start opening your mouth like I did. Obviously I was released without charge, so you know, I didn't get into too much trouble. So I was trying to organise that, but there's a starking similarity with the Northwest 12 and what happened to me, to a lesser extent, but to my friend Hisham. Hisham is an Algerian national who was a PA to the head school in modern languages, and very, very articulate, very intelligent man. Been here for over 13 years, did his undergraduate studies here, did his postgraduate studies here, was doing a PhD, and then was working as well to pay off his fees for his PhD. So, you know, he's not the average Joe on the street, with respect, that you would think that, oh, he might end himself up in trouble. This is a very young, articulate, intelligent man. He was helping me draft it. When he was arrested with me, he was released after 6 days, that's how long we were held. He was released and immediately taken into custody of immigration services, the UK Border Force guys. The excuse that they kind of used was that he was avoiding his immigration status kind of thing, and basically he was trying to avoid detection from the immigration authorities and thus was trying to stay longer. We knew that this was a complete farce and that the government, to try and cover up, I mean, Alan Simpson, one of the MPs for Nottingham South, said this quite clearly, that to cover up their cock-ups, the government has basically, or the Home Office, because how it works in governmental bureaucracy is that everybody scratches each other's backs. So when the police knew that they'd made a mess of this and it was a complete mess, they got immigration to help them out. So what's the best way of dealing with somebody who you've wrongfully arrested and held for 6 days? Now, I don't know if any of you have ever been held in detention, but detention is very difficult, especially when you're being tracked as a suspected terrorist. This is one of the most serious crimes that you can ever be accused of, and my heart and my thoughts and my feelings go out to the Northwest 12 and their family and friends who, I mean, in my case, at least my family were allowed to speak to me over the phone, but in this case, they're completely remote regions of Pakistan, and there's no way of contacting them, and I'm going to be interrupted, but I'll come back in a second.
आपने ये जो सब कुछ मुझे बताया ना, अब ये मीटिंग को भी बता दें वापस से, तो मेहरबानी होगी। 1 मिनट में आपको मिला रहा हूँ, तो आप शुरू कर दें। शुरू कर दें ताहिर साहब। नहीं, उर्दू में। ताहिर साहब, आप शुरू कर दें।
रहमान मेरा भाई और उसको हमने आला तालीम के लिए यूके भेजा था ताकि उसका मुस्तकबिल बन सके, लेकिन बच्चे को ऐसा नहीं हुआ और यूके में उसको बगैर किसी चार्जेस के अरेस्ट किया गया। मैं आप लोगों को बताना चाहता हूँ कि जब रहमान यहाँ पर था तो उसकी जवान बीवी की मौत हो गई। उसके बाद जब वो वापस गए थे उसका बाप बीमार हो गया, वो वापस पाकिस्तान आया और 2-3 महीने अस्पताल में अपने बच्चे के साथ रहा, लेकिन बच्चे को से उसकी मौत हो गई। After all these tragedies, he was not able to go back to UK, but we convinced him. But he is the because he is the backbone for our family, and I have to say that the best level in our family is 10%. My husband is general manager, and I am also a government servant. My brother-in-law is a doctor here. और सर हमको जैसे इस वक्त का पता चला हुआ अच्छा और हैरान भी था क्या है, हम हिंदुस्तान वालों से लोग क्या चाहते हैं। यहाँ पर ड्रोन तैयार है, हमको मार रहे हैं, और अगर सभी के लिए बाहर चले जाए तो ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट हमको डायरेक्ट इजाजत के गिरफ्तार करती है। इससे तो अच्छा था कि ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट हम पर अचानक बंद करा देगी और हमारा जिसका यहाँ खत्म हो जाता। इसके बाद सर मैं आपको ये बताना चाहता हूँ कि हम मोहम्मद साहब के काफी शुक्रगुजार हैं, इन्होंने हमारी काफी हेल्प की और हमको काफी गाइडेंस दी है।
अच्छा, मोहम्मद साहब आपके साथ हैं? मोहम्मद आपके साथ हैं? जी, उनको भी मिला देंगे। मोहम्मद आप अंग्रेजी में बोल सकेंगे? आप अंग्रेजी में बोल सकेंगे? तो या ओके, आप अंग्रेजी में फिर आप बोले, शुरू कर दें। हेलो, yeah, you can speak now.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I'm very grateful for all of you that you came from different cities of United Kingdom. I'm really very grateful to Mr. Tariq Mahmood, Mr. Wakara Basi, and all the committee members and English community members and all other members. I'm very grateful to you take this matter very seriously. I'm representing all the students members in Pakistan who were arrested in the United Kingdom. The recent arrest of Pakistani students on state charges of terror activities by the British police has not only received a widespread condemnation, but the students who are planning to go to UK for studies, they are also greatly affected by this accident. The families of students are suffering a lot. Believe me, when I talk to those students, I start crying because they are really very afraid. They are very scared because everybody keep a distance from those people. They are not only everybody is afraid that their family member are declared terrorists and in the United Kingdom. And you know, in the Pakistani society, it is a bad name for those. They are really suffering a lot. The student has not made any contact with the families after the student release was announced. The families called Pakistani Foreign Office, the Pakistani community, the English community, the charity organizations, and the human rights consultation of Pakistan, the member of parliament, European Parliament member, Dr. Lord Mayor and Lord Nazir Ahmad, Sabar Khan, and Dr. Abdul Khan, I requested them, please take this very seriously. To allow them, to complete them, and to allow them to complete their education. It would be a disaster for the country if the students were exposed to Pakistan. The students, it would be them a threat to the UK. It would be difficult for them to return to UK, USA, or Europe, or other countries, even Afghanistan. They are not going to Afghanistan as well because that will be not easy for them to live in a respectable way. And
Mohammed Sahab, I think Mohammed Sahab, the line has gone bad, so I think we can hardly hear. Hello? The line has gone bad, so we can hardly hear. Hello?
May, can you send our solidarity?
Do that, yeah. Can we just say thank you very much? Yeah, a big round.
I didn't understand everything that was being said by Tahir, who I think is the brother of Tariqur Rahman. But if I understood rightly, both his mother and father have died. Is that right?
Just father.
Is it just the father? So, or is it the mother died and the father is very ill? It's one of the two things that I did catch. So, and also, it's very important to realize that all the people who are talking to us are actually not in one place.
Yes.
You know, they're in vastly different areas, and a lot of them have not yet met each other as well. But through the organisation of today's meeting and the campaigns that lots of people are doing for them, this isn't the only one, hopefully, that people who are doing, that they are getting together. Perhaps we could just continue on from where Rizwan left. Then we'll say.
Okay, sorry about the slight hitch before. I forgot to ask, are there any intelligence agents in here, by the way? If they are, can you see me outside at the end, please? I'd like to debrief. Yeah, I was saying, when you're arrested under the Terrorism Act, one, it's a very serious charge that is put against you. I don't know if any of you know how you're arrested. It's Section 41, and I'm going to bore you with some legislative talk, but it means you're involved in the commission, preparation, and instigation of an act of terrorism. Now, that's the charge that's read out to you when you're arrested. Now, if any of you have ever had that charge read out to you, the first reaction to that is laughter. If you're innocent, that is, obviously. If you're guilty, then it's like, damn, I got caught. But if you're innocent, like me and my friend Hisham, it was a complete laughing pile. The first thing we said to the police officer was, Are you being serious, mate? Are you having a laugh here? Honest, and I was actually giggling inside thinking, this is great, you know, this is a complete cock-up. Right, anyway, the laughter went after about 7 hours of being in detention and realising that, you know, the magnitude of the charge that was being put against you. Being a terrorist is a very serious charge. But what's even more better than being a terrorist is being an illegal immigrant, or being a threat to national security and being a foreign national. It's this relationship of convenience that the state has found against foreign nationals and is being used quite clearly and evidently in this case in the Northwest. Now, we've been campaigning, the Free Hisham campaign, the Free Hish campaign, we've been campaigning for almost a year. On the 14th, it will be a year since the campaign was launched. And one of the most difficult things that you guys as supporters, well I hope you're all supporters, will find with the campaign is sustaining the kind of public profile and public support of the campaign. It's a very difficult task, and therefore my advice to you is to innovate and to try different methods of communication. People have very, very short memory spans. What's in the press today will be used for chips the next day, okay? And I'm Pakistani myself, but I have to say this, the Pakistani community is the most guilty for being the most kind of removed from reality. My parents were put through hell when I was arrested. When those searches and those raids took place at my house when I was in custody, they were devastated, they were broken. You know, my dad lost, I've never seen my dad crying, and I'm going to admit this on camera now if they're only recording, but he cried when I was released. That's how devastated he was. But you know what? After 2 weeks, when it all died down, and I was cleared of all charges, they just went back to their lives. And the Pakistani community is very guilty of this. And what that proves is that you have to keep talking about it. So talk about it in the mosques, talk about it when you're having your delightful curries in your house. You know, talk about it when you're in the pub if you drink. Talk about it wherever you are, just keep talking about it, okay? It's very important that you keep the rhetoric up. Only if you keep the rhetoric up, people's motivation will stay high, and only then will you know, try to receive or be able to achieve that small bit of justice that's, I mean, that this country so, you know, proudly and venomously admits that it's a part of. Because I tell you something now, the judiciary in this country is not about justice. It's about how you are with your words, and it's about what's politically correct to do. My friend Hisham is in prison at the moment in Canterbury, serving a 9-month sentence for avoiding immigration charges. He had a hearing in April. Yet, conveniently, when he was arrested under the Terrorism Act, he was handed over to immigration control, kept in custody for 33 days, and then released on bail, where he had to appear at a police station every week once. How bail works. Then he had his day in court, and even then we had to fight so vigorously for that day in court. They wouldn't give him his day. They filed an immediate deportation order. You know, so this is how the state works. It will try and channel you away, so you do not open your mouth. Or I should say, fortunately, I was born and bred in this country. I'm a British citizen, and I've got a big mouth, as you can probably tell, and I'm going to keep speaking. But not everybody has that opportunity. You know, to get hold of some of these parents who are, you know, from remote parts of the northwestern frontier province is difficult. You mean, I don't know if there's reception over there, excuse my ignorance, but, you know, this is how difficult it is. And these mothers and fathers are being rejected and denied the right to speak to their children, who they have sent over, probably scrounged rupees together, and sent them over to Britain to try and get an education so they can improve their life back home. You know, this is how difficult it is. One of my friends who's here, he's one of the lead coordinators of the Free Hisham campaign, and I don't know if we're allowed, but I think it would be good if he just said a few words right at the end before everybody left, in order to give everybody a little bit of advice as to where to take the campaign. I mean, I know that when this case broke, the Free Hisham campaign were very interested immediately because of the political nature. But then when the deportation orders were filed, it made it even more interesting. And the thing is, there's certain shortcuts that we've learned, the hard way, or the long way I should say, that will be very useful, you know, from fundraising to writing letters to who to talk to different ways of trying to get bail, etc., etc. So I think that would be a really good way if the Northwest 12 could be tied in with the Free Hish campaign. I think it'll help both of our causes, and I think that hopefully one day we'll be able to achieve that word justice for these 12 that are being arrested. But for the time being, I'm going to leave it there, and I thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps we could hear a few words from one of the students at Manchester University, who are in terms of, you know, how students are feeling, and just generally what's going on. Fareen Hussain.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'd like to make clear here is, especially, I completely agree with Rizwan and also with Amtarik Saab that, I've been trying to campaign for, the Northwest 12. And the one thing which is, I think, most important to realize is how hard it is to talk to people, especially the Pakistani people. Two elements which I've recognized are very strong. First is fear. Because the problem with this campaign is that it generates a lot of fear. Lots of people feel this fear in being involved in anything which is even remotely, political, anything. So if they embrace their voice against these things, if they discuss them, even on email groups, I'm not even talking about protesting or campaigning actively. Even discussing these things on email groups is considered, I don't know, this might highlight us in the media or in some way, and that's why people stay away from them. So, and I think it's really stupid because you have to realize that the more low profile you try to be, and the more, the more passive you try to be, the more susceptible you make yourself to be attacked. Because the more removed you are, and the more you pretend to not care, or just think that, I think it's best just to complete my studies and go back home, the more susceptible you are to be attacked over and over again. Because the reason why they think they can treat us like scum, pick us up, deport us, detain us, abuse us, is precisely because we do not mobilize. We have no street power, we do not discuss these things, we do not debate, we have no meetings. The Pakistani, people over here, I'm sorry to say, just to get them to come together is probably the toughest thing possible, right now. And I think the second issue is this element of indifference, that people think that this thing is not linked to them. Well, I think this, especially this incident, is very important because it shows to you that it is very much linked to you, because these 12 people, like, it was discussed right now, they are completely innocent. They're just like us. They go to Nawab, they like to wear t-shirts, they go to Primark to shop, they play cricket, they watch movies in cinemas, they're just like us, and they were picked up for absolutely no reason. If it happened to you, it's 100% chance that it can also happen to us also, and that's why it's everyone's problem, every single person's problem. So this whole thing about indifference and this belief that perhaps they were guilty, this incident has proved that the police themselves conceded it's a failure, they found nothing against them. So these people were 100% free of charge, nothing against them, and they were picked up. So if it happened to them, it can definitely happen to you. And if not for if not for selfless reasons, at least for a selfish reason, try to mobilize, try to discuss it. And I think I'm really happy to see so many people here today at the meeting, but it's more important to keep the struggle sustained. I mean, to discuss it in a few days, as gossip, and just to take the name a few days, it's okay, but you have to sustain it. Just like the lawyers movement in Pakistan. I mean, I'm going to use that reference because in my childhood, in my youth, the one positive thing in Pakistan I've seen was the lawyers movement. And the only reason it was so successful was because they kept it going. In the worst of circumstances, against invincible people like Musharraf and then God knows what, they kept the movement going. And that's the problem with the Pakistanis. You have to sustain the interest. It's very hard. And that's why it's very important for us to sustain the resistance for these 12 students. Thank you. I think that's all.
I think, I'd like to say a few words and possibly and then really open up so that we can all discuss something. Sitting down this morning really, and it's true it was difficult, but not as difficult as it was because people in Pakistan said, we will get the people, we'll find them, we'll form a campaign, how shall we do it, how shall we look? So the last person you spoke to, Mohammed, he did an enormous amount of work off his own back, and he's asked me not to give any much more details about himself. Now, I think, I don't really agree with Farheen in that it is difficult for him for the mobilization of people. Pakistanis are no different to anybody else. They have come out over the years in their tens and thousands. There is a general beating down of political and social movements, and it affects everyone. Whether they're Pakistanis, whether they're Indians, whether they're workers, whether they're anything else. And in moments of history, things change. But what we heard, and I've worked in Peshawar. The last time I was in Peshawar, bombs were going off. That was 1989-ish. It was the Soviet Union's war. The Americans were there. I remember very clearly drinking in the Peshawar club, and a holy man turned up. He was a French intelligence officer. He was brilliant in his impersonation of the local Pashtuns, of his local things. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, no better way to mobilize within that area than to do this. I witnessed with my own eyes some of these people who today are the demons incarnate. You know, the Osamas and all these people. They were there, they got money by the bucket load, and I saw them, and I even saw the private prisons in which they kept people who did not agree with them. Their money was paid for by the British, the Americans, the Saudis. But coming on to it, that war hasn't ended for the people out there. In a sense, Farheen, what we're doing, we're living under terrible terror ourselves. What we have witnessed of mothers dying when kids can't talk to them, or fathers being inside, only round the corner, not very far away from where 1 million people are on the move. That isn't very far away from where the Americans are bombing people. In fact, 100 people they killed only a few days ago in Afghanistan, in 147, according to the local police chiefs of the province in which they're killed. So in one sense, I think what we found ourselves in are new weapons of mass destruction. The Taliban in Pakistan, for the rights and wrongs of whatever else we may think, it's almost now reminds me of the weapons of mass destruction. Who on earth is what? Almost the same as what we've become here now. You know, maybe I should share. I heard some stuff. Did you read any of the newspapers after the people in Manchester were arrested? Degrees were on sale in Pakistan. Well, that's great, living in a society which tampaks are bought on taxpayers' money, toilet seats are bought by MPs, in which corruption is not only rampant, it's legal, in which the Home Secretary who's holding these people down, her husband is downloading pornographic films, and I'm sure that they watch them together, or he's certainly watching them on his own, to go on about fiddling in another part of the world. We also live in a place where the synonymous issue, you know, I'll share a little email I received about Pakistanis now, that there was a woman crossing a road and a dog attacked her. A man ran up and kicked the dog to death. The journalist who was there very quickly wrote, "Local hero saves lady." And he said, "Actually, I'm not local." And he said, "Foreign hero saves lady." He said, "Well, actually, I'm Pakistani." He said, "Terrorist kills dog." In a sense, what they have done is made all of us into terrorists. And there's no question of the way that they're dealing with us at the moment. But can we do anything about it? I believe we can. I believe that one of the fundamental things that we should start doing, and my friends are here from the school. How many parents were asking what is going to happen to our children as they grow up in this country? This happened in my school, from which people are present, even in this room. The only hope we have is to organize, and we organize for basic and simple reasons from today. We have got people here from London, from Sheffield, from Birmingham, and a number of other places. I think at the conclusion of today's meeting, we should transform ourselves into a campaign to demand the release of the arrested students, the reinstatement of their visas. The two of them missed their exams last week. That facilities be provided, even if they're not going to be released, for them to be able to sit their exams. And also an apology from the government. I think Names made some point as a resolution, in which he said, Gordon Brown says, a major terror plot has been foiled. We live in Manchester. The police, Fahi of Manchester Police, has said that there are going to be more to come. Why should the Muslim community communicate, share any information with the police? We are not terrorists, you are terrorizing us. This can only be stopped if we stand up to stop it. Now, we have problems on our hands. People generally say, well, there's no smoke without fire. That's been said to me when I've been giving leaflets. Well, that's absolutely true. You have lit the fire by occupying other countries. The Pakistani government shamefully has gone and waged a war of terror on its own people, and today 1 million people are on the march from one area alone, internally displaced, and they received $1.9 billion from the Americans to attack people in the tribal areas. None of these issues can be resolved. There is no smoke without fire. But what we are suffering from is the fire. The fire lighters have gone from here, miles away. Now, what on earth can we do? We cannot ignore the external processes. We also live in Manchester, if you remember, not very long ago. The Trafford Centre was going to be blown up. Was it Trafford Centre in Ireland? Trafford Centre was going to be blown up. They'd raided terrorists. They're less than a mile away from here, on Birchfields Road or somewhere down there. They'd arrested some North Africans and some Algerians in a blaze of publicity. They were later on given tickets for the football match. The fact that their lives were destroyed and rubbed through the dirt did not make it onto the front pages of the newspapers. In this very city, one of my friends, I myself was in jail 20 odd years ago on terrorist charges. One of my friends whose son was coming back from Pakistan was arrested, and he's now doing 12 years. I think he had a CD on him or something like that. I'm not sure of all the details. And when they arrested his son at Manchester Airport, they raided the houses in Bradford, and the reason the father had been arrested 25 years earlier was because he'd ran away from home and he thought he was safe in my house. But he came from the very area where today there's war going on. He was from the same area from which his son returns. History has not left us. It has wrapped us in a different way. Now, we also remember not very long ago was the convoy to Gaza. They too were arrested in a blaze of publicity. That was on the M56. And what all that does is demonizes every single Muslim. But actually, the threat is not to Muslim, it's the demonization of the whole of this society. What sort of society are we living in where you are?
It makes me very angry to see what's happening to us. And I'm going to actually put some of the blame on my heritage communities as well as my UK community as well. We as British Muslims or British Pakistanis
completely gutted and completely everything taken from the houses, even the cars taken. Most of the goods that were taken off these people were not given back. The goods meant for the people of Palestine, not given back. What did the police question them about? For 6 days they were questioned about the fundraising activities of Viva Palestina. In other words, political activity amongst Muslims in Britain was the question. That was the terrorism. Last November, Jackie Smith said, we're changing the definition of terrorism. It is now non-violent extremism. Fundraising for Palestine is now considered non-violent extremism. It's a disgrace. We need to campaign, we need to mobilise, we need to organise in our communities. If we can't get masses on the street, we need to get small numbers of people that are willing to picket police stations every time this happens. We need to organise ourselves and say that we will not tolerate this. We organise ourselves in Viva Palestina, we got press releases, we got the message out, we got them released. But we need to go much further now. Thank you.
Do keep putting your hands up. I'm trying to move the microphone as we go around. I should just add to that last point as well. What these men are charged with is Islamist extremist activity. Ask anyone who hasn't heard that phrase before to ponder on what Islamist extremist activity is. You know, maybe like Christian extremist activity or atheist extremist activity or whatever.
My name is Jasbir Singh. I'm from the South Asia Solidarity Group in London. I'm really happy to be here at this meeting. I think everything that needs to be said has already been said, and I don't plan to say anything more on that. I just want to go back to the point that Tariq just raised. We support the formation of a nationals campaign here, and some of the resolutions which Tariq read out earlier on with regards to the demands, we also support that. I agree that we should combine with the Free Islam campaign as well, and we should also seek ways in which we can, there are so many other individual such campaigns which are going on. We should see how we can join up with them as well. We should now, I think over the next half an hour, whatever we have at this meeting, focus on what activities we can actually organise. And you also mentioned that we have the hearings over the next 3-4 days in London. Do we want to have any activities in London to actually emphasise or promote some of what we have actually heard in this particular meeting? Why don't we spend the remaining few minutes talking about that?
Do you want to just pass that to... That's right, to your neighbour. I've got 5 more hands over here. I'm going to take those and then see if we can put it together. Go on.
I'm Javed Siddiqui. I think a lot of what's been said, I don't want to repeat in some ways, obviously agree with. Like Jasbir said, I think it's really important we form some sort of committee and that we try to get an organisation going. As Tariq mentioned, I mean, really there's a lot of momentum in our communities to do this sort of thing. As he also pointed out 30 years ago or so, maybe it was some time ago, he was the first people to be arrested as a terrorist. That activity has continued in Bradford, Sheffield, Manchester. If we can build up that network again and have campaigns in there, and as our colleague who said previously, we need to get some really good headlines and humanise the individuals who are involved. For my own part, I don't know all the details. It would be really good if we can, from the lawyers and whatever, to know the details about such things. And I, for my part, in Sheffield, will want to form a committee there to try and move the thing forward. And I think I'd really like that to be addressed here, how we form a committee to do that. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
My name's Chris Woods, just a member of the general population. We've just got a comment. From as I say, sort of just a person without any agenda. A lot of the language used is, or has been used today, is one as a sort of a victim mentality, where obviously, it's very true that things aren't done always correctly, and people picked up, as Rizwan was, for reasons which perhaps aren't able to be proven. But personally, I don't think that Muslims are being targeted because they are Muslims. I think that the Muslim community, because the threat, a lot of the threat comes from the Muslim community, that will therefore define where people are looking for that threat to exist, rather than focusing on the Muslim as a whole. I think.
In a moment, can I let people who haven't spoken first? But, all right.
Thanks, everybody.
My name is Karabasi. I'm just a humble worker in a local charity, and I'm here today. I'm part of this campaign as well. It's the first one in my life to get involved in really of this nature. Young friend is right in saying that I'm guilty of many things. And if I start reading my charge sheet, it will blow your mind really. First of all, I am guilty of being a Muslim, and I apologize for that. Secondly, I am guilty of being a first generation Pakistani, so I apologize to some people who find that offensive. And I am also guilty of being a member of minority community in this country, and it offends people. Most probably I lost 90% of you already, to be honest with you. The point I'm trying to make to a young friend and many other people who are in this room, most of them already converted, so waste of time really. But it's a fact that when some of you go home in the evening, after you finish your work and go on with your daily tasks, I don't have pleasure of that comfort where you can sit in front of your telly and watch your Coronation Street and have your drink. I don't have some of those luxuries. First of all, I'm not allowed to drink, so there you are. They got rid of that facility from me. And secondly, then I have to watch one of the most boring channels called Al Jazeera to make sure that I can build up my defenses for tomorrow morning when people like you ask me all sort of questions about the people I don't know. You will ask me about North Africans, you'll ask me about Taliban. Some of these people I never met in all my whole life. You'll ask me to defend their stance, and I bloody don't know how to do it. Secondly, then I have to watch some other channels, local ones and national ones, and read newspapers to build up defenses against the first generation of people who are attacking me next day, and the second and the third generation at times. So I think society, the point I wanted to make really is here's a young loyal standing on my right hand side, and here's a young man on my left. I can guarantee you, and this is fact coming from the history and the lessons people learn from history, that one must not get too cocky. Simply because today it's me, the first generation, the Muslim, and so on and so forth, tomorrow it will be you. I can guarantee you this, that you'll be next in line, and then I won't be standing behind you simply because I won't be there. I'll be arrested on the charges, on the crimes that I have committed.
Thank you. I'm going to take the two more I said I was going to take, and then come back to the platform, and then focus very definitely on what we're going to do.
My name's Norma. I was part of the group that tried to call this meeting, and so I'm glad everybody's here. And I hope there's a contact list going around, and everybody leaves their contacts for further activity. I was hoping that somebody maybe from the No Borders campaign was here, because if we saw this week, they managed with Joanna Lumley to really show up Phil Willis, and I think a lot of what's happening to us is because of this Labour's immigration laws that are just getting more and more vicious and gathering in more and more people and creating an atmosphere among us all as though we're being invaded, rather than that we've got other people coming here that can add to our communities, to our knowledge, that we can actually have a much better society with a lot of different people. And I think the No Borders campaign certainly have been targeting Phil Willis, who's the immigration, whatever they call him. And so I think we should link up some of those campaigns, because it's very important to be able to focus and get media coverage with the different people. So, is there somebody from there?
This one wanted to say something from the platform, and we're going to try and bring it together.
I mean, first of all, just because the first speaker who spoke from Pakistan, Nasrullah Khan Khattak, afterwards we connected to him again because some of the journalists wanted to interview him. And what he had said to me was that he has not been able to speak to his son since he has been arrested. And he is very keen to be able to do that. I don't know what the lawyers can do about that. Secondly, I think a couple of things have been raised. One was about the control orders. Control orders in some ways are more, they are more dangerous, they are more, whatever you want to call it, then being put in internment that happened in Northern Ireland, because when you are in control order, it's not only affecting you, it's affecting your family. And I think I was in touch with some of the people who were in control orders. There were some Libyans in the West Midlands, and they could not actually have a birthday party for their children, because anybody over the age of 10 can only come in one to the house. So none of their children can actually have computers. They could not. So, you know, it's actually not just punishing an individual, it's punishing the whole family. I think the other thing we need to return to is what we're going to do from here. I think there should be a national campaign, and there should be campaigns in each city. And I think I've come from Birmingham. We are part of the Pakistan Solidarity campaign in Birmingham. We organized the Guantanamo campaign in Birmingham on behalf of Mozambique. And I think these people were actually kept, you know, in Guantanamo, for example, I think somebody raised the issue that it's the Muslims. I've got this thing about being victims. I think everybody who is in Guantanamo is a Muslim. If you look at the names of countries that you can mention today, they're all predominantly Muslim countries that have been occupied, attacked and bombed. Okay, so I think 1 million people who are actually being displaced in Pakistan today over the last few weeks and are all predominantly Muslims. So I think Muslims to feel victims is, you know, reflecting what the reality is. So I think people who are on control orders in this country predominantly are Muslim. I think they're all Muslims, as far as I know. So I think we have to face those. But I think what is important that we start a campaign and we actually demand certain things of the government. I think one of the things that was really bad was when immediately after they were arrested, Gordon Brown issued a verdict. I mean, he issued a fatwa, said they are guilty. Okay. Now he's not entitled to do that because I think he's breaking the law in doing that, as far as I'm concerned. But I think we should demand an apology from him, and I think we should actually be putting on his Prime Minister's website a petition to do that. And I think there's a resolution that we should discuss, but I think one thing should happen is there should be a national campaign with things happening in Birmingham. I think in Birmingham we would probably organise a meeting within the next 3 to 4 weeks.
From the police or the government on this matter, they never apologise, and that's what rubs your face in it even further, that they know they've made a mistake and they'll never apologise. Average member of the population, good question. Essentially what my friend is arguing is that not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslim. This is a disingenuous argument that should be shown for what it actually is. You talk about Muslim. I'm really glad you asked, actually. I must say I love it when people come in with views such as yours, because it allows us to move the issue forward. Because there's no point in sitting there preaching to the converted. They're already converted. Right? So next time bring your family and friends, do. The Muslim community feels victimised because they are victimised. They are victims. And that's the reason why they're pretty pissed off, to be honest, and they have a right to be. Now I understand that victimisation is one thing, it's a very bad thing, but what we have to do as a community is we should kind of unite together and move, and use that victimisation in a positive way. Don't let it deter you. Don't let it kind of defer you from taking any action. That victimisation should be your motivation to go out and do something. So I think that's very important. And about the whole, this whole argument of, you know, because they're Muslim and they're no smoke without fire arguments and they're all terrorists, or because they're Muslim, or vice versa. It's very important. In order to tackle the threat, the people that are at this meeting, I can guarantee you now, apart from a few intelligence agents, most of them are alright. Right? And they want to see the end to all this violence that's happening in Britain, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iraq, Iran, wherever it's happening. They want to see an end to it. That's why they're here today. And the point I'm trying to make is that you need us. The government and the state needs us to help them fight this problem. And it is a problem. It's a very small problem, and I wish the media would stop trying to sell it as it's a problem and a cancer that runs throughout the entire Muslim community, because it doesn't. They need us. But the thing is, they can't stop vilifying us, and that therefore disallows us from moving forward and actually tackling the root problem. Because most of the Muslim population in this country are crying because their sons and daughters are getting arrested. So that's the only way we can move forward. So next time, dude, bring your family and friends, and I'm willing to have a word with you outside as well, because I love it when people like yourself want to sit down and discuss it. Most people can't get their backsides off Coronation Street to come to these meetings, but that's what we need more of. Anyway, and on that bombshell, I'll leave it there. See you later.
I just want to say two very quick things. One is that what's happening to these boys is not unique. For example, the men who were acquitted in the Ricin plot, you may remember Colin Powell used that as one of the reasons why we should go to war with Iraq, were acquitted, immediately Sayat. Okay, still fighting, in and out of prison, in and out of bail, fighting the courts. Dr. Asher, the doctor who was the Glasgow terror doctor, acquitted, immediately Sayat, facing deportation, got bail in January, won't have a hearing till October. Young British men, 3 of my clients last week, were arrested, questioned, released, 4 weeks later control ordered, houses raided in the middle of the night, moved out of London, away from family members under the most draconian conditions. And so I think that's one of the things that we must build into this campaign, that you can't get out of the system. If they think you're up to something and they can't get you the right way, they'll design a whole separate legal system for you. And that's what control order's doing, and that's what SIAC is doing. And the other thing is that people talk about humanising the men. And we accept where I work, and we've been working with men in SIAC for many, many years, that it's one of the things that... Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's a special immigration court. That we have failed to do. The men don't have names. So they're called A, B, C, AX, BY, DF, and you don't know who they are. And previously, many of the men had come from countries such as North African countries, didn't want their names to be publicised, were fearful for what might happen to family members. But I think with this group of men and some of the British men who have more recently been control ordered, they do want to start speaking, they do want to start telling their stories. And of course they're fearful, but I think that will start to happen. I think that's something we should certainly do is this campaign, make them real, you know.
Thank you very much, and I think this has been a really excellent meeting to have brought together people from London and Nottingham and Sheffield and as elsewhere as well as Manchester. And obviously there are going to be a couple more meetings in the next week or so in Cheetham Hill and in the university. But we've got some practicalities to do now, everybody. The first is, who is sitting with a contact list on their knee? Well, make sure everybody else in the room has signed a contact list. Has anybody not signed a contact list? All right, pass it round to anybody who has got a hand up, and don't hold on to a contact list and take it off yourself. We want it back so that it can be shared between everybody. Secondly, we will need, thank you, we will need to have a collection for some money for the room. So you can start rattling in your pockets now for some coins, or preferably silent £5 notes or whatever. But a collection for the room would be greatly appreciated to help pay for the costs of today. But thirdly, there have been a number of practical proposals that people have made. First, and I don't think anybody's argued against it, was the proposal that there should be a national campaign. This does take in people in lots of different places. Can I just ask, is everybody agreed that we should have a national campaign against the terror raids? Anybody against it?
We're discussing, I think this should be specifically focused on these students. I think that the campaign should be focused on justice for the Northwest 12, perhaps. And then, of course, we should link and support, you know, like the colleagues at the back were saying, because I think it should be specific, and then we should have specific demands for that campaign, which I think we've highlighted enough. We don't need to go over them. John, is that okay? I mean, what's the name, like Justice for the Northwest? Are there still 12 or 11 now?
10.
Or Justice for the students, I mean...
Justice for the Northwest students?
Yeah. Well, that...
Northwest students, yeah.
NW10 is catching.
NW10.
Then you want to shoot them. But we come on to a title now.
Alright, but people are in favour of a national campaign, and a national campaign focused on justice for the students, whether we call them the Northwest 10 or the Northwest students or whatever. Is everybody agreed with that? Yeah. Very good, a bit of noise. Now, secondly, we've had a proposal to join in with the demonstration at Strangeways at 6 o'clock this evening. Are people okay to do that? Yeah. Very good. Okay, I'm not suggesting we're walking all the way from here to Strangeways, am I? No? Okay, that wasn't the proposal. I can, but not everybody has to. But 6 o'clock at Strangeways. Everybody know where Strangeways is? All right. People from locally will take people towards Strangeways. So that's the second proposal. And then the third proposal, which was kind of more of a question, I think, from somebody, was whether we wanted to do something on Monday or Tuesday whether we wanted to try and do something in London, or whether we wanted to try and do something here in solidarity with people in London. Now, that was left open. I don't think anybody came back on that particular point. So, if there's a particular proposal on that, anybody want to say? Yeah, over there.
Just quickly, when Barbara Ahmed was in prison, and they did have a court case, and we did actually take people from Manchester. We hired minibuses and people volunteered to drive them. We did over a couple of days manage to fill a couple of minibuses and go. And I kind of feel like there's no reason why we can't do that now. There will be people that will be willing to take time off work and will help organise. And I think we should, collectively. I think it's great to do something in Manchester, but actually come together because there'll be people from London, Manchester, Birmingham, Sheffield, everywhere that will want to do something. And you're out there together. You feel bigger and stronger and more united.
Can we get some information where...
All right, the information is this: 10:30 on Monday and 10:30 on Tuesday at the Royal Courts of Justice, which is basically Strand area of London. I'm looking at Saj for inspiration a little bit here, but anyway, it's the Royal Courts of Justice, the Strand area of London. There is a front entrance that looks very similar to the Town Hall in Manchester, so it's pretty recognisable. There's also always a lot of TV crews hanging around there in case there's some trial going on. Now, this is a question to people, because if we say yes, we want to do that, it may well be that there are people in London that may want to organise similarly, but how many people here realistically think that they can go and lend support there on Monday or Tuesday in London, and if so, which? Yeah? One? Okay. The Manchester one.
I think what we should do really is ask friends and comrades in London. We can do that after the meeting. What we should say, in principle, we'd like a demonstration outside the court. And then I think between us all, we have enough friends. Let's do that.
All right, so can we agree, based on that quick discussion, if you can get to London at 10:30 on Monday or Tuesday, fine, and go and, lend your voice. But if not, can everybody take away this message, this knowledge, that 10:30 Monday, 10:30 Tuesday, Royal Courts of Justice, anybody you know locally in London who could get there, then tell them to go along and support. Any message of support that you can pass on, either via lawyers or directly, then try and pass on. But we're going to raise it, as it were, electronically or through telephones or through other messages to show that there is support, even if people can't be physically there. I mean, it's not going to be that the lads themselves will be there. After all, they're still going to be locked up and detained and far from human contact. But it would be good, obviously, if we can pass those messages of support on. Is that all right with people? Yeah. Yes, you want to say?
I think it's certainly worth having something, but it should happen in an organised fashion, that we actually get maximum publicity for that particular issue as well. It may be that Monday may be too soon. I don't know. Today is Saturday. And it may be that the whole hearing is going to probably go on for 3-4 days or whatever. Is it just for 2 days?
Tuesday makes sense.
Maybe Tuesday makes sense following the hearings. I think if we can get people who will be able to speak to cameras, maybe we can organise the cameras in front of them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very focused point. Can I suggest an amendment to what I just said, and then say, let's mobilise people for 10:30 on Tuesday. So the message that we send out is 10:30 on Tuesday, and if you're able to go, 10:30 on Tuesday. But also, to reinforce that locally, there is another public meeting at the Saffron Restaurant in Cheetham Hill, on Cheetham Hill Road, Saffron Restaurant, on Tuesday evening. That's at 7:30, I believe. And that's at Saffron Restaurant. So that is a direct reporting back. It's a direct way in which what has happened on Monday and Tuesday can be given to the meeting, and further solidarity can be shown from that meeting. So does that make sense? If we go for a focus Tuesday morning for any messages or physical support, focus Tuesday evening for a response. Is that okay with people? Yeah? Right, any other practical proposal that I've forgotten from now? No? In which case, can I thank everybody very much. Make sure we have the contact lists back up here. Make sure you give some money to whoever's collecting on the door. And can I particularly thank all those who've come some distance today to join the people in Manchester. And make sure that we do go on till we get the guys released. Thank you very much.